Good evening, everybody. Welcome to yet another Dear South Africa live stream on this Thursday evening for a change. And joining me this evening, Daniël Eloff from Hurter Spies Attorneys. Dani, goeienaand. Good evening to you and the viewers. How are you doing today, sir?
Hello, Gideon. I'm doing good, and thanks for having me. It's nice to be on the YouTube channel for the first time. So I'm quite enjoying it so far, even though we're only a minute into it.
Well, that's fantastic. Listen, you are here by extremely popular demand. After myself and Rob's brief stream I think it was last Monday or Tuesday, we had a discussion specifically about this unlawful entry bill and kind of what it entails, and we unpacked it a little bit. But that said, there was a lot of comments post stream where people said, look, they really enjoyed the talk, but they want some real meaty legal opinion and as to what exactly does this mean, what does it entail for ordinary people, whether it's property owners, whether it's tenants, whether it's farmers, and how does it relate to other pieces of existing legislation? For example, your right under the Criminal Procedures Act of I think it was Section 49 pertaining citizens arrest maybe would be a good one. Can you still defend yourself? How to handle trespassers? There was a lot of vagueness to it, and maybe we can unpack that tonight a little bit, Donnie. I don't know if you've had a deep read pertaining its contents yet. I suspect you may have.
Yes, well, I mean, it's like a six-page bill, so it's not that tedious to go through. Actually, any South African should just take the time and read through it. I mean, it's like with most laws in South Africa, it really depends on, is this bill going to be good or bad? I know a lot of people have been asking that in previous interviews that I've done on this topic. People always sort of want to know, well, are you for or against this bill? And it's quite interesting. I think we see a lot of sort of divergent opinions on this. Even just in our law firm, I've had disagreements between colleagues where some think this is an excellent idea and others think it's atrocious, and it's just it's breaking down on the old or the current Trespassing Act of the 50s. So it really sort of is this open debate at this point. So perhaps, unfortunately, for those who are hoping for me to provide this crystal clear legal advice, I'll likely not be able to do so, simply because legislation in South Africa really depends on how it's enacted and implemented. In the end of the day, not enacted, how it's implemented. We have this abundance of laws with good intentions, but when it comes to actually practically enforcing these laws or sort of interpreting them, then that's sort of where the iffiness comes in. And I suspect the same will happen with this new trespassing bill. Perhaps just to sort of introductorily say, the bill, if enacted, will fully repeal the old Trespassing Act, like I mentioned earlier, the one of 1959. And it would basically establish new laws prohibiting unlawful entry in South Africa. And like you said, on various premises, agricultural land, freeholds, your own property and whatever, business property, etc. So that's what it aims to do in a nutshell. And it lays out the fence of trespassing and what it would be. But then now the question comes in, well, will it be actually implemented as it's supposed to be implemented? And like you know yourself, legislation in South Africa isn't always implemented as wonderfully and perfectly as it's supposed to.
And what's a particular concern for me is just how vague it is, in the sense that if you're having legal professionals in the same law firm having rather extensive disagreement on the contents and perhaps the direction of the proposed bill, then it indicates to me that the layperson is really out in the wilderness trying to make heads or tails of what the impact of this will be. And equally, if it needs to be used in a court of law, whatever the vector of its application, that's going to be, I'm not going to say quite a coin toss, but it's very open to interpretation. And surely, as someone who's a complete layperson who has no clue about laws really, if I had to say to you, vague laws are probably really bad, would that be a safe comment?
Yes, and I mean, in South African jurisprudence or law, we have this this rule that legislation can't be vague. It's supposed to be clear and concise. You know, we have these obligations imposed on the various legislatures nationally and provincially, requiring them to write clear, concise, and understandable laws. Yet we sort of become accustomed to laws not being written that way. I mean, how many times in the past 10, 15 years, even before that, have we been confronted with laws that are vague, that sort of can be interpreted in various ways? It's sort of become the norm. And then what happens, this legislation gets pushed through, and then we sort of leave it to the courts to interpret and determine, well, how will it be implemented, and to give some content to it, and basically just to interpret it on behalf of the legislator. So it is a tough situation, not just with regards to this bill, but with regards to most others that we've seen come out in the past few years.
Essentially, it's legislative Russian roulette, which is not great for legislative process, legal process, or democracy. So let's say previous Trespassing Act is completely repealed, or will be completely repealed by this. This will replace it in its entirety. Is trespassing as an offence, therefore, still Schedule 1? Can you still perform a citizen's arrest, for example, or would you be forced to rely solely on the police as per the contents of this bill? Or was that not maybe what they meant there?
Yeah, well, so perhaps let's start at the beginning. The one thing that the bill says it intends to do is it wants to, they say that the old Trespassing Act has lost its relevance in our constitutional democracy. And what they mean with that is they say, well, it's a law enacted during the apartheid era, therefore it must be bad. And now what's happening is the legislators intending to take away the entire Trespassing Act, or the old Trespassing Act, rather than sort of amending it and tweaking it and aligning it constitutionally. What it basically does is it creates it creates the new crime of trespassing. It says that the offense will be if someone unlawfully gains entry into your enclosed property without permission, and if they're caught without any of the explicit or implied consent of the owner of the property. So it creates this new offense, but whether it's going to be whatever schedule offense is going to depend on how the Criminal Procedure Act is amended and how they'll include it there. But presumably, it's also going to have sort of various forms, sort of various different trespassing. So I don't want to call it levels of it, but they do refer to, for example, limited permission being granted for a person to be there. So now this, again, vague situation arises. Well, when do you have limited permission to be on a person's property or not? It also puts a duty on the owner of a property to, inform the alleged intruder or transgressor that they're busy transgressing, which is also sort of an interesting dynamic that it adds. The act itself basically just says that I think on conviction, if I recall, it's a fine or imprisonment for a period not exceeding 2 years, if I recall correctly. So that's sort of the level of seriousness which the law adds or attaches to trespassing in this new bill.
So what's interesting about that is if it's, and the specific reason why I asked about citizen's arrest is that is the only form of arrest your average security officer, that's not an actual law enforcement officer or member of the SAPS or Metro Police, those are the only powers of arrest they have. They have the same powers of arrest as an ordinary citizen and nothing more special than that. So in essence, if someone is trespassing on your property, but it is not an offense, schedule of which allows for citizen's arrest, you cannot legally get, and this is a ridiculous part of it, a security company to remove that person from your property. And I don't know if it limits your rights equally as well. I don't think it would limit your rights pertaining to self-defense against a trespasser, because as soon as a person attacks you, I mean, that's a different offense altogether. It has nothing to do with their trespassing there at all. So I can't imagine that would reduce your rights or abilities in that regard. But it does create a bit of an interesting conundrum pertaining to dealing with trespassers. And the limited permission part, or sorry, what is it called when you give someone like temporary permission or the thing?
Yes, the act refers to limited permission in section 4 of the proposed bill.
Yeah, limited permission is a kind of extensive bear trap, because it means, someone may have limited permission to do paint your wall inside your boundary on the morning of April 15, and 10 months later rock up for some other purpose that might not be legal and use that as a defense. There's also another vague part to it, which is a person may defend against a charge of trespassing if they, what was it, believe they have a right to access to the property or something similar to that.
Yes, and I think that sort of touches on the whole labor tenants aspect of agricultural land. So I can just go one sort of point back when you were discussing the seriousness or the schedule of the offense and citizens' arrest. So the Criminal Procedure Act in section 42 says that any private person without a warrant may arrest a person if they commit a Schedule 1 offense in their presence, so meaning they saw it happen, or they reasonably believe they have committed any offense, so that means anyone, not just Schedule 1, and that they're busy escaping and that you have to pursue this person in order to arrest them. So those are sort of the two circumstances under which you can enact a citizen's arrest. So the first one being for any Schedule 1 offense that's committed in your presence. So Schedule 1, basically, that's sort of the worst of the worst crime. That's arson, treason, sedition, violence, public violence, murder, kidnapping, robbery, all those sort of really, really serious crimes. So anything less than that, you won't be able to enact a citizen's arrest unless you believe they committed an offense such as trespassing, and that they're busy fleeing and that you have to arrest them, otherwise they're going to escape and they won't be brought to justice. So that's always this interesting thing with new legislation, is how it sort of interacts with old legislation, how it works with the Criminal Procedure Act. You were talking now about self-defense in this case. Again, sort of an old common law concept on when are you allowed to defend yourself and your property. So yes, it might be that this person is on your property, they're busy committing the new offense of trespassing, and they want to rob you. Then again, you're well within your rights to defend yourself, and you're well within your rights to defend your property, but it has to be proportional and reasonable. So then the court will ask the question, if you ever are unlucky to get prosecuted for this, well, did you act proportionately to the threat that you face? So, I mean, if it's just a fellow walking around trying to steal something on your property, you can't go out just shooting the guy. At least in South Africa, all over the world, they have other approaches to this, which is also actually an interesting topic for discussion. For example, in the United States, they have what they call the castle doctrine, which I think is something South Africa really, really badly needs. But yeah, be that as it may, sorry, I'm sort of going on a bit of a tangent there. The point is, this bill can also, I believe, be viewed in a positive light. I mean, the one positive is that it does sort of put a bigger obligation on the South African Police Service to actually do something when people are trespassing. And we know that's a massive problem at the moment. I mean, we see land grabs. Our firm does a lot of this work where we try to defend property owners when there's an illegal occupation of their property. And often the problem is, the first step that you have to do is you need to go to the police and open a case, and they're actually the ones supposed to remove these people. But they so frequently don't, or they take a really long time. And what this bill does is it does place a more emphasized duty on the police to actually act in those circumstances.
Okay, so it's not all bad. There is perhaps a bit of a speck of light at the end of the tunnel with it, and it is indeed, I think, empowering the police to act against trespassing is very much a zeitgeist right now, especially as you already mentioned, the land invasion. In fact, Jane is kind of jumping the gun here, but she's asking the right questions. The EWC bill is also in process. Is this bill an enabler for that bill? I don't know if the two are necessarily connected, but then, Donnie, in your most tinfoil hat conspiracy theory way of thinking, what would you say to that?
Well, I think the question is not necessarily a legal question, but if I think if we frame it as a political one, then it's an interesting discussion, because I mean what the expropriation bill does, in sort of text form, is not what it's going to do, I think, politically, and the same might happen with the Trespassing Act. With EWC and with the new bill, and even when they wanted to amend the Constitution, we saw a spike in land evasions. So people get motivated and boistered by the fact that there's this legislation potentially on its way, and it's sort of it makes people believe that it's a just cause trying to occupy another person's property. It now just depends on how will the police probably interpret this new Trespassing Act. Will they actually see and realize that it puts this emphasized duty on them to act and to stop trespassing, or will they view it as, oh well, this is a relaxation of trespassing, and therefore it might have bad consequences for what I believe is likely the inevitable result of the EWC bill going going ahead.
Yeah. So the other realistic point is that we can't look past the fact that the police may very well just not have the capacity to respond to call outs for trespassing, just as they don't have the capacity to respond to far more serious crimes, be it robbery, rapes, murders, this sort of thing. It might bump it up the seriousness rankings quite a bit, but we're still sitting with a general situation of a lack of rule of law in South Africa, or at least this is a significantly eroded one. And what concerns me about that is we now writing more laws, either to address specific situations that are considered crisis points in the country, or in potentially in this case, perhaps relax them. We don't know. The jury, no pun intended, is still out on it. But we are expecting the same organs of state that are not curtailing or getting a grip with the present situation to now somehow find the resources to address this one as well. So, but look, that doesn't actually factor in at all into the contents of the bill. The bill is just a piece of proposed legislation waiting for Parliament to make a decision on it.
Yes, and I mean that's why I think I wanted to start this conversation with that point. Is regardless of where you sort of fall on the technical debate of is the bill good or not, is, well, the point is when we see our prosecuting authority and the police not being able to even arrest and convict the smallest of crimes, so it's sort of a useless discussion, to be honest, because like you said, we don't see the criminal justice system working as it's supposed to. So whether or not trespassing is being relaxed or made more strict in this new bill is sort of irrelevant at this point. We can have that discussion when we come to a time where our police arrest people who are alleged or it's alleged that they committed a crime, and our prosecuting authority can actually prosecute crimes fairly, and they don't, a criminal case doesn't take years and years and years with, dozens of postponements before the thing is actually trial ready. So it's probably one of those questions. What do we really need to sort out the Trespassing Act and make ourselves feel better by this new piece of legislation, or should we really do the hard work and ensure that we have a government that's sorting out criminal justice and trying to protect its citizens?
Well, this is the other thing, and just to give people a bit of perspective, our conviction rate for murder is around 15%, and our conviction rate for rape, reported rapes, are around about 8 to 9%. So two of our most serious crimes involving extreme bodily harm pathetically low conviction rates. I cannot imagine a very high conviction rate for trespassing, especially if what constitutes trespassing is vague, nor a speedy police response. So I think that there are warranted concerns about the rights of property owners pertaining how to handle trespassers. I think the onus placed on them, I can see where it's coming from. I really can see where it's coming from, to make sure people know that they're trespassing on private property. Because if you're talking about a piece of agricultural land that may or may not be fenced, a person may not actually know they're on private land. So I do get where that's coming from. However, the other side of the coin here is, what are we possibly eroding? What Pandora's box are we opening? And I'm not going to tell people what to do. So it's a nonpartisan platform. We can't choose a side on the bill. But in general, if people are unsure, Donnie, if people are unsure as to how they feel about this, what would you recommend they do? Because comments are going to be important here. What the public's participation input into this bill is going to be decisive.
Well, I mean, like I started the conversation by saying it's not a really long bill. It's 6 pages. Go and read it. It's not written in a very difficult way. Usually when we have amendment bills, it's sort of written in a very technical way by insertions here and amendments there and replacements wherever. So it's very difficult for a layperson to read. But this act is simple. How the bill is here, that's what, if it goes through, that's how the bill will read. So it's very easy for a person to just go and have a look and read the act. So my suggestion would be, take the time. It's going to take you 10 minutes. Read through the act and decide for yourself whether you think this bill is good or not. And then secondly, it might be wise to just have a look at the old Trespassing Act to see, to compare apples with apples, to see what are we replacing the old act with, and what was the old act and what did it entail. Because I know a lot of people are very much upset, and people feel, well, why they're relaxing trespassing. Well, then go have a look at the old Trespassing Act to see if that really is the case, and then from there make up your mind, and then obviously participate on all the lovely, wonderful platforms such as DearSA and give your comment.
I think that's key. Is please do submit your comment on this before the comment period closes. I'm going to tell you in a moment when that is, but if you think the bill is too vague, if you think it's not clear on certain points, if you think that it's eroding your rights as a property owner, those are valid comments. Put those in there and say you do not agree with it. If you feel that this strengthens your position as a property owner, that it makes it more difficult for trespassers to get away with the act, and that it is going to empower the police somehow to take action, then also please say you're in favor of it. And remember, the comments close on 16 September, so you've got about 2 weeks left to educate yourself, formulate some form of response or comment. We've already had roughly 5,000 people have their say, but we're going to need many more. So definitely, I think, participate in this. Donnie, from your side, your firm, I don't know if we've contracted you for an official opinion on this one yet.
No, not yet, and no, I haven't for any other clients so far. I'm more than happy to do that. But here, I see a lot of people are saying, well, this is an attack on property owners. I would really implore people to go read the old Trespassing Act. That's even quicker to read than the proposed bill. The old Trespassing Act is a page, one pager. Still has lovely language about talking about Her Majesty the Queen and her laws. So go have a look at that act and then decide for yourself whether or not this Trespassing Act is better or worse than the current one being proposed. And you should also bear in mind, and this touches or ties into your point about public comment. Remember, the bill is now open for public comment, and this is your chance to give your input and to potentially have the act changed and improved, and to get the wording that you'd like to see. So that's the long and the short of it is, I would definitely implore people to participate in this public comment process.
Yeah, I see that Jane says it closes on the 12th of September, apparently, that we're going to have to amend the page, but there is part of the link. In fact, just go to the link is in the description below this video, folks. You can really just click on it. But I think getting your comments in on this very, very, very important. And I think we do sit in a situation in South Africa where people feel private property rights are under attack. I don't think that's necessarily hyperbolic, but it starts with you folks taking ownership of these democratic processes, because the more people that say they would tell government what they want gives us an easier time at getting that message through to them, because we do present the final results of this to, in this case, it'll be the Department of Correctional Services. Dani, I think we may have, I don't know if we've sort of run out of this discussion. Is there any additional points you want to touch on? Because I think we flew through this evening.
Well, perhaps I should say that, and this is sort of just the libertarian in me coming to the fore, is if a bill that's 6 pages can create this amount of sort of controversy on interpretation, just imagine what bills like the NHI bill does and potentially could do regarding vagueness and interpretation and the effect. Think about what the EWC bill could mean and entail. So I quite enjoy it that people are, really passionate about a 6-page bill, because I hope people will then be equally, if not more, enthusiastic in their opposition to other bills, which are considerably longer, considerably more, has a bigger potential for misuse, and I think is a bigger threat to liberty and freedom in South Africa than this particular bill.
Excellent. So, Dani, I think that's a great sort of lesson to take forward regarding public participation, everything else. And Jane says, no, we're right. It is the 16th. So 16th of September, you have, as of tomorrow, 15 days left, folks. And I think get those comments rolling in so that you can have an impact, because every voice does matter. And apathetic citizenry are a larger threat for our rights, freedoms, and liberties than tyrannical government is. So, Dani, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule on a Thursday night to come talk to us for half an hour about this. And folks, if you have any additional questions pertaining to this, please pop them to us either in the comment section or send them to info@dearsouthafrica.co.za. We do get those messages and can respond to them. And we can get to this on next week's live stream as well. For all of you, thank you for being here, Dani. Ek hoop jy het 'n lekker aand verder.
Thanks. Always a pleasure, Julio.
Fantastic. And we will do more of these very soon. See you all and get your comments in. Very important. Thank you and bye-bye.